Tonight, I will be doing a show unlike any other you have or will see on my podcast. Because tonight we're going to delve deeply into IPF. IPF stands for Idiopathic Pulmonary Fibrosis. According to WebMD, the definition of IPF is a serious lung disease. As you know, when you breathe in, oxygen moves through the tiny sacs in your lungs and into your bloodstream. From there, the oxygen travels to your organs. IPF causes scar tissue to grow inside your lungs, and it makes it hard to breathe, and it only gets worse over time. Now, the scar tissue is thick, like the scars you get on your skin after a cut. It slows oxygen flow from your lungs to your body, which can keep your body from working as it should. Now, you should know that right now there is no cure for IPF. For most, the symptoms do not get better, but treatments can slow down the damage to your lungs. Some people will get worse quickly, while others can live 10 years or more after diagnosis. There are treatments to help you breathe easier and manage your symptoms. You might even be able to get a lung transplant. Now that's the medical side, and probably about as far as we're going to delve medically on this show tonight. Because you see, I want to focus on the personal side of IPF. Listen to what patients and caretakers have to say, how they deal with the disease day in and day out, how hard it is for our loved ones to watch the disease get worse and eventually take our lives. Now you see, this show is very important to me, your host. See, I have IPF. I was diagnosed a little over a year ago, and am battling both the mental and physical side of the disease. My wife Jen will also be joining us tonight. As a caretaker, she has had to take on a lot of responsibilities, some new ones and some chores I used to do, which I cannot anymore. We will also speak with other patients who have this disease, and hopefully by airing, we'll be able to have a guest who just had a lung transplant. Now, the show might seem a little sad, but all of us, the caretakers and patients, want everyone, our loved ones and friends, to understand what we have, what we are up against, and most importantly, how we feel, and hope others will treat us. Note that no one at any time will be recommending any medical advice of any sort. I can't stress that enough. If you have IPF or think you have IPF, or your loved one does, talk to your pulmonologist about your condition and heed their medical advice. No one on this show tonight is a doctor, and again, no one's going to be offering any type of medical advice. Well, good evening and welcome to Your Life Matters. I'm Steve Hodgson. I'm your host tonight, and we have a great um, set of guests this evening as we talk about IPF. And I'd like to thank everybody for coming on the show tonight. I'd like to thank the people who will be watching this, whether they're watching it live or watching the taped version back. Um, we hoped that we were going to have the gentleman on who had just gotten a lung transplant, but unfortunately he couldn't be with us tonight as he was just released from the hospital and was traveling home, so that just wasn't going to happen tonight. So I want to go around the room and welcome our guest. First, underneath me, okay, we have this. I'm hoping everybody set up that way on their screens. We have Carl Whipple. Carl, just wave so they know that's you. There we go. Okay. We have Christian Johansson. Did I pronounce that correct?
You did.
Okay, great. Okay, and then I also have my wife and also one of the co-hosts of this show, Jen Hodgson, there as well. So, as I said, we're going to talk about IPF and something they talk about, which is called QTR, which is the quality time remaining. Now, I heard this said by Paul Stanley of KISS the other day. His manager was telling him when they asked him how long they were going to go on with their tour. And they said, well, as long as we can do it. And then he said, but it's QTR. It's the quality of your time remaining. And I think that's so important for us with IPF because it's a progressive disease. Okay, unless they come up with a cure for it, which they don't have right now, unless we get a lung transplant, it's eventually going to take our lives. So I think it's something that we need to discuss. A number of people asked me about the cannula that I wear on a number of episodes. So I figured this is the perfect time to talk about it. So, Carl, I'm going to go to you first, if I could. When were you first diagnosed with IPF? Tell us a little about what made you go seek that medical advice in the first place.
Oh, that's a really long story. I was diagnosed October 18th of 2018. No, 16th of 2018. Um, I had that mucousy cough we all get with IPF. I actually had that cough since 2010 and never could get rid of it. Seen, I must have went through 8 pulmonologists trying to come up with a solution as to what was causing the cough. Nobody could give me an answer. Um, I finally found a pulmonologist over here where I live that had said, have any of your doctors ever said anything about pulmonary fibrosis? No, never heard. I mean, I had heard the term once or twice before, a family thing or something along the lines of somebody's mother had it at some point, and but that was it. And had never heard it anywhere in the genealogicals of the family or anything like that. And he said, "Well, that's looking like that's what you're going to have, so we're going to send you for more testing and see if we can come up with, what type it is, because they tell you idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis is an umbrella term. It does coincide with so many different types." But he said, "That's what it's looking like you have." And I'm like, "Well, that's great."
So they didn't find anything in any kind of CAT scans or anything that they took.
None of the previous ones had. The pulmonologist I've seen over here was my second one within a year. I had gone to one. I was working for Great Dane, and I had gone to one because I couldn't get hired on with them because I couldn't pass their breathing test that you have to pass.
Mhm.
So I had gone and seen him, and he just said, "Well, it's just COPD." And I thought, I've been dealing with this cough for so long now. I'm going to go get a second opinion. So I did. And I got set up with the pulmonologist I have now, and that's where I found out he managed to look at 2 different sets of CT scans and could tell that there was a difference.
Yeah, it's strange because the like for my sake, I guess I'll give a little bit of my story because the only two people with IPF here. Um, I know with myself, it was being out of breath all the time. They actually thought it was heart issue because I've had heart issues running in my family, and they ran the gamut of checking my heart. I mean, I came out like 99.5% fine with my heart, and all along, Jen kept saying, "Is anyone going to check his lungs?" Because they were doing everything on my heart and couldn't find anything. And there was one doctor who was willing to bet his salary that I had blocked arteries, and that's clogged arteries, which was causing the issue as a cardiologist. And luckily, my insurance company said, "We're not going for that test. Okay, nothing has shown that you have clogged arteries. We're not going to pay for that." So finally, after pushing my general practitioner a little bit of checking my lungs, which is when they did the PT scan and the CAT scan. PT scan came back negative. There was no cancer, which I was glad to hear. But the CAT scan showed the IPF. And like you, I had no idea what IPF was
Yep.
or even heard of. And basically, we started looking, well, Jen started looking it up. And she's coming back with the initial stuff that used to be a few years ago, 3 to 5 years left of life, which was like, okay, wait a minute now. Okay, that's a little too quick here. But luckily, with the OFEV, which is what I'm on, we're supposed to get at least 10 years, if not more, from it. So, you know, it's a scary thing for us to go to, but we have to go through it. Now, Christian, I want you to tell our audience a little something about your situation.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. My dad was diagnosed with IPF in October of 2019. And there were a lot of things happening in our family and stress that around that time that for some reason or another sparked something that made him made the condition worse. And so that's when he got the diagnosis. And so since then, immediately, right, I got on an airplane and I flew down thinking that it was something that was going to take his life really quickly. But then I spent probably 3 months with him down in Florida. I live up in Seattle. And, I ended up having to do the things around the house that he couldn't get any. This was during COVID, right? So that he, first of all, we had to be super careful about going around him. And so every time there was somebody new that would come in town and wanted to see him, he'd have to quarantine and then all those things. And so it took almost a month before of quarantine time before you could actually see him. But it was difficult to get people to come do things around the house, right? And so I flew down there, my brothers and sisters did. And so, I got to spend 3 months with him down there initially. And since then, I go back every few months for a week or two to take care of the things in his house that he just can't get to. And every time I go back, there's a few more things that I need to do and that he can't, just can't get around the house very much anymore. And so he can't even go down and get the mail and those kinds of things. And so it's just nice to spend time with him. Mostly my mom is the primary caretaker. And so she's just, bless her heart, that she's taking on a lot of the things that he did, or just in general, like maybe the home budgeting and those kinds of things. And so, my family in general didn't really understand what the disease was. And when he told us what he had, the first thing you do is Google it. And then, there's so much more to it than what you Google. And so what I've done, I was kind of at a loss for anything more that I could do to help him other than things around the house and, carrying, heavy things up and down the steps and, going to get the mail and those kinds of things. And I talk to him every single day, and he kind of needs that because he's stuck in his house essentially. Right. And so I spend probably, 2 hours a day on the phone with him, just kind of talking. And so do my brothers and sisters. And I think that really helps. And the more he gets sort of stuck in his house, the better conversations we have. And so that's really nice. So the good side of it is that, I started to see a side of my dad that I didn't see before. And I think just the mortality of it all was, brought us, I think, closer together. But now that he's had it for a few years and he's on oxygen 24/7 and he's on about 2.5 liters, which makes me feel good because there are people that are on a lot more liters than that. I wanted to do more. And so a few months ago, I had the idea to raise some money for the Pulmonary Fibrosis Foundation. And for those of you who haven't gone to look at this, it's a great online resource. I'm not affiliated with them in any way, but it's a great online resource to get information. They have a registry there, and it's a real credible place to, get information about IPF and where to go and resources and those kinds of things. And so my brother and sister and my brothers and sisters and I all had this idea to raise money for them. And so we came up with an idea to drive to. My family is initially from Iceland, and so we're third generation from Iceland. My great grandparents were one of the first people to leave Iceland to the U.S., and so we have a rich history in that country. And so we're going to next August, ride a small scooter around Iceland for 2,700 miles to raise money and awareness for IPF. And so our goal is about $75,000 for the Pulmonary Fibrosis Foundation, so they can primarily have directed gifts toward the registry, because we don't really know how many people actually have it out there, and what are the genealogical things associated with IPF. And so that's where this money is going to go. And so if you want to check out what we're doing, the website is.
The link up. I just put the link up in the YouTube.
Oh, good. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's and the easy URL is scootericeland.org.
Okay. I'll put that in here too. So
yeah, you should check it out. And so, as a child of somebody who has IPF, other than doing things around the house and things that they can't normally do, there's not a whole lot to really do other than be there for them, right? And so this was just something that we could kind of do and feel better about.
Is he bedridden?
No, he's not. But he does. I mean, he stays in his house, but travels maybe 20 feet between his office and the kitchen.
So he wears his dog leash also.
Yeah, I like to say that he's on a short leash.
But yeah, well, I call him my dog leash because
my wife calls mine.
Yeah, because really that's what we are on. Mine's 40 foot long, so I can go anywhere, including sitting on the front porch, and still be attached to the machine at all times.
Yeah,
so.
and it got really difficult because his compressor that he has in his home is a force fed, and so for his birthday last year, we all pitched in and got him a portable one. But the problem is that it wasn't force fed, right? So you had to draw the oxygen. It was just too much for him.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so now it's just really hard for him to get away from his big compressor.
See, I don't want to talk bad about any products or anything, but anyone that's watching that's thinking about getting one of those portable machines, understand that even the 3 liter constant is still only about 2.4 liters of constant air. It's not what it's telling you it is. And that can be dangerous. Even myself, who I'm on 4 liters, and I think, well, okay, if I'm traveling someplace, by plane, maybe I'll just get one of those. It's 3 liters. It would do me. I'm sitting down. I'm not doing anything. But then, no, really, it's closer to 2 liters. So am I cutting my oxygen in half by flying someplace? And it becomes dangerous at that point. So.
Yeah, and it was $3,000, so it was really expensive for it. And we ended up having to return it because it just wasn't. It just didn't work.
Right. So the question I'm going to ask now is to Jen. Okay, time to put her on the spot a little bit here. She's been too relaxed here. So tell everybody your side of what's going on here for you.
Well, I mean, there is a difference in the way that, we live our life. We live around oxygen tanks. And so just going anywhere, we always have to make sure we have enough tanks to get from where we're going and back home. And I mean, that's really a big change for that. Taking on more of the responsibility of doing things around the house, doing the mowing and whatever else needs to be done. That's a little bit of a difference. And it becomes exhausting, but you just have to make sure that you take time out for yourself and take care of you too. I mean, you can't just neglect yourself, because it's always what I tell other people. You can't take care of others on an empty cup. You have to take care of yourself and make sure that you're getting the things that you need to, even if it's 15 minutes a day that you have for yourself to do something that you enjoy. You need to do that, because otherwise, you become exhausted. I mean, either way, you become exhausted, but, you have to have that time to yourself. And if you're feeling upset, don't feel guilty about being upset, because there is a lot that you're dealing with and a lot that you're going to be going through, not just emotionally or mentally, but physically. You're going to be exhausted too. And having a good support system is really important. So, I mean, those are just all of the changes that we've been going through here and dealing with all of that, and learning to not trip over the cord or his dog leash, as he calls it. Um, that's a huge one. I mean, I think we play jump rope around here a lot with not stepping on the cord and jumping over it, and your feet get tangled up, and you got to figure out how to do that while you're doing other things. So it becomes a big ordeal. So my question, though, Christian, is, does your dad have portable tanks that he can go places?
I've seen him in his garage, but he doesn't use them,
Okay.
and I don't quite know why. He does have tanks out there, but for some reason I don't know why he doesn't.
Are they the really big tanks, or are they the smaller tanks?
They're like maybe 2.5 feet high with a green top on them.
Echoes, E-tanks.
I don't know the difference between e-tanks. I just know I have a lot of tanks in the living room. So
Yeah, well, I can
the
answer kind of why he doesn't like to go places with these tanks, and I had the same thing when I first was diagnosed. Is it's something you associate with when you're not used to seeing it. You would associate it with end stage, and it can be scary to be seen with it. And for the longest time, it took me probably 6 months after they put me on oxygen 24/7 before I left the house with a tank. And I mean, when I first started, I was on B tanks. They're only, I don't know, 18 inches tall. And yeah, I wouldn't leave the house, or if I did, I was driving and I wasn't getting out of the vehicle. That was pretty much what it boiled down to.
See, I'm not afraid of mine. I mean, I started with the B tanks as well when I started. Now I'm up to the E tanks, and even the next size up. I use the next size up in the car, and then I have a backpack for the other ones. So I wear one. It lasts me about hour and 30 minutes, hour and 40 minutes. But I got to the point where, hey, I want to go out. I want
Yes.
to do stuff, okay? And I can't go out, and I can't do stuff
Exactly.
without oxygen. It's really what it comes down to. And I got to the point where, and I agree with you 100%, because I guess I was the same way. When you saw someone wearing oxygen, right away you figured, that's it. These poor people are, they're finished. And it's not. We're far from being finished with that. But it allows us to live life a little bit. That QTR
Yes.
again, that quality time remaining. That was the main purpose of the show. Is I want people to understand that when you see us out, it's not the end of life for us. It's us trying to enjoy what's left of our lives. Now, I had told Carl before we started, Jen obviously knows, Christian, I'm not sure if you know. Well, yes, you did, because we talked about being a paranormal investigator. So we go on, let's say, like last week where we were on an investigation. I mean, I got to bring half a car of tanks with me. Okay, I need at least 2 big ones for inside the tank, for it's an hour and a half up, hour and a half back. And then I need one every hour and a half that I'm there. So I'll probably bring 6 more tanks that are there. So already I have 8 tanks. And Jen's not kidding. We have a closet downstairs, closed closet, that the entire floor of the closet, standing up, has about 51 tanks in there, because we go through them so often. Right now I have a pile, what, you'd say about 15, 20 tanks on, that's sitting outside the closet that are empties. That's how quick we go through them, but I refuse to be tied up in the house. And I think that's why she was asking Christian that question, because there is still life out there. Yes, we may not be able to carry in the groceries anymore. It kills us. I'm sure Carl, I'm going to let him talk in a minute. It kills me having to have her to Jen mow the lawn. I mean, something as simple as mowing the lawn. I can mow a portion in the back, but that's about it. You know, where last night I was cooking and almost passed out. I mean, just standing by the stove. I mean, just literally, she was sitting on the porch on the phone, and I went, sat on the bed, and texted her, "Help me." I didn't know what was going on with it. It's one of the first times that's ever happened with me, but it's something that's going to happen more and more. That stuff scares me more of what's happening in my life, but I feel bad even going grocery shopping. She'll literally say at some point, "Just sit down, and I'll take the bags in," because I can't do it. Now, Christian, I'm sure you've had to do that for your dad when you've gone there. So I heard you say you were carrying stuff for him.
That's exactly right. Or, you know, there's little things that bug him about the house, right? Like, oh, there's weeds over there, or, you know, that thing needs to get done, and just stuff that kind of he thinks about all day long, and he just can't go out and do it. And so when I show up, you know, he's pointing all these things to me and watching me work out there. So it might be a little like you know, everybody likes to see their kids work. Might be some of that too. But, you know, you know, usually he's out there working with me. He used to, but now he has to sit inside. And he lives
Instead of the honeydew list, it's the sundew
well,
list,
and he
right?
lives in Florida, and so the weather is very hot there, which doesn't help.
Yes.
Doesn't help him breathe either.
Well, I don't know. I find that warmer weather is better for me than the cold Indiana winters.
Okay.
Because we're talking about possibly moving to Florida. a
So-
year from now.
How does your
So-
mom cope with everything, Christian?
She never complains, and she does it very dutifully, I guess is probably a good way to say it. And whenever I talk to her, I'm like, you know, if you ever want to just go have a weekend away with your friends, or you need to get away, like you need a break, so I'll come and spend a week down here. Or, you know, and my dad would probably feel a little guilty of, you know, or feel bad about having her gone like that, right? Because I think maybe you become dependent on your caretaker quite a bit. But you know, it's she handles it really, really well. But you know, you can tell that she's also getting tired and old.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah.
It does wear on you a little bit. So hopefully she will take you up on that, and hopefully he doesn't feel guilty because somebody else has to come and sit with him while she goes and recuperates, you know. And even if it's just for a day where she can just, you know, go do something for herself, I think that would be really awesome. And that might be some baby steps to kind of take with that.
Yeah, and she gets out to the store, and you know, she'll leave for a bit, but my dad's always wondering where she is, and you know, that kind of thing.
Right.
Carl, I want to ask you, what's it like for you not being able to do some of the things that you used to do?
It's been a really, I'll put it. It was a complete lifestyle change when I was diagnosed. I grew up in a garage. I grew up hands-on. I've never had an office job. I've never had a sit-down. I can't say sit-down. I did drive tractor trailer for several years. But even with the traveling, dealing with that was a big oof on my system. But for somebody that, you know, has always been a moving person, even now it'll take a toll on me because I can't stand sitting still. I've never been one to sit still. It's like this weekend, I won't be sitting still. I got brakes I got to go change on my truck. It's things like that, you know. And I seen a meme on Facebook the other day. It was, oh, I got my to-do list done. Now I'll go recuperate for next week. For the next week. Not for next week, for the next week. And I went, good God, if that doesn't hit you right in the damn gut, because it's true. You know, there's the last truck I had that one was In 2019, I had to put a clutch in that one. So that was 7 months after I was diagnosed and I was on oxygen. I was still out underneath the truck. It took me 4 days, but I was still out there underneath the truck putting the clutch in. And I paid every bit for the next month. And it's, like I said, it's a lifestyle change, period, because you can't, like you said, Steve, y'all were talking about moving further south. Temperatures make a difference. Humidity makes a difference. I was born and raised in Florida part of my life, and I was down there 14, 15. So 2014, 2015 was last time I was down there, and I was dealing with this at the same time and still trying to get it figured out as to what I had. And when I left the Tampa area and moved back north, I felt an immediate change in my being able to breathe because of the humidities. It made a big difference, and that's one thing I've learned with in the house. It's if it rains, I ain't going outside after it rains. Because you go outside, it's like someone just grabs a hold of you by the neck, and it's like, nope, you can't get no air.
And you're here.
Yeah, I'm over by Terre Haute.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Oh,
I
wow.
thought you were here.
Yeah, I'm only a couple hours away.
Yeah.
We will just have to meet up sometime.
Definitely.
Yes.
I know, Christian, you said your dad's on 2 liters, and Steve, you're on 4. Yeah, I'm on 6.
Correct.
Plus. I'd leave my concentrator on about 6.5. I can get up, I can go to the bathroom, I can go to the fridge, get a drink without having to turn it up. If I want to go out past that, it's going up to like 9. And
Now, are you able to shower without it
no,
on?
it stays on permanently, pretty much. If I take it off within 5 minutes, I start seeing stars because my O2 levels are down in the 70s. And that could be sitting just like this perfectly still, just not having my cannula on, my numbers will just plummet.
See, the last time I went for that 6-minute walk test, the nurse, which I'm sure my pulmonary doctor would have gone through the roof, basically said, you have to sit without oxygen on for a few minutes. And my number stayed up like 98, 99, just sitting there. So she told me that I was fine, with the 3 liters. And I do take it off when I shower, because I'm just not ready to have this thing on when I'm taking a shower inside. But I agree with you, when it's off for a while, if I'm doing anything and it's off, I mean, I know right away, forget about the fact that I don't feel the air going up into me, but I know if the hose is crimped, because, like you say, you start seeing stars. You
start knowing what your indicators
quick.
are.
Right, exactly. Well, I just say that when you're wearing these cannulas, your ears grow. And the reason your ears grow is for every time you step on the thing, or I have 2 dogs that like to tangle inside this hose, and I'll suddenly start walking forward, and you get pulled back. Or I do it myself, getting out of bed, just stepping on the cannula.
Rip it off my head.
It's like my ears. So I feel like I'm going to be Dumbo soon. Okay?
I've gotten smart and wrapped it around my my pistol holster on my hip when I'm walking around the house. Half the time my holster is just always on my belt. Mm-hmm. So I wrap it around that so that if I do catch it on something or I get to the end of it without realizing it, I don't go boom.
I'll also say that my he tells me he's on 2.5, but I also think that he might be telling me it's a lower number because he doesn't want us to worry. Right? And so,
but you need to know that. But you need to know what number he's on.
Yeah, because that's, in all honesty, that's one thing I keep my wife up to date on. I live with my mother-in-law. We live with my mother-in-law, my sister-in-law. So,
sorry to hear that.
No, I get along with mine. I like mine.
I'm kidding. I'm joking. No, I was kidding.
But they all know what I'm on, just in case something happens. That information needs to be had by everybody, literally.
Well, Christian, I'm going to ask you this question. Um, we obviously know how your immediate family has reacted, but how has his friends and extended family reacted to having the
Well, I think
disease?
they're everyone's worried, first of all, and that worry, I think, worries him more than anything else. And so when I talk to his brothers and his sisters and his grandkids, and they always ask, how's he doing? And they ask two or three times, like they really want to know. And it's it's difficult to really say, like, because he doesn't like to talk about it, right? And so when we do, I really all I can tell is by the color of his face and how sunk his eyes are, right? And how much weight he's lost. And so and since I talked to him on FaceTime, right? So every day for a couple hours, and that so I get a good feeling for how he's doing, because I can see him. But they're in general, just people are worried. But in the, I think in a way, he doesn't want that, right? He doesn't want anybody worrying about him, and he wants everything to be back to normal.
Well, let me ask you. So, does he think it's going to fool you? Sorry, I had to think about it. I don't call, had to step away, and it blew me for a second there. Sorry, it threw my chain of thought off. But does it bother you that he's not telling people the truth about his disease and how far it's
Not at all. I
progressing?
mean, it's his thing, right? And so if he wants to talk about it, I'm all ears. If he doesn't want to, that's just fine. I'm there for him too. And honestly, there's nothing I can really do other than help him with stuff around the house, right? And so, maybe I want to know the gory details, but it's not going to do any good, right? So,
Is he still eating? Does he
yeah,
still have an appetite?
he didn't for a while. And it's interesting because the more engaged we were with him, his family, the better his appetite was, right? And so initially he lost a lot of weight, right. Probably, so he was diagnosed in 2019, late 2020, early 2021. He lost a ton of weight, and we were all very worried. Like, when you hug him, you could feel his back. But now that all of us are all around a lot, and we always make sure that somebody's, in addition to my mom, is there to kind of help with stuff, and we're engaged and talking to him all the time. We're kind of in a nice flow of, getting to know. He was a CEO, and so he's a very powerful guy with very smart, and so he needs his brain sort of working. And so once we figured out what kind of kept him going, his appetite came back, and his general, like, perspective on life got better. And we stopped. He used to be the guy that we would all go to for with our problems, right? Because everybody goes to their dad with their problems, and so we just kind of stopped doing that, right? Because it would just add more and more stress to the situation.
Now, Jen, tell us a little bit about what your family's been going through. I mean, the kids. I mean, obviously, I'll talk about my own family, but what about your side of the
So
family?
I have a lot of family. I have a large family, and when they call or when they text, they do ask how he's doing. Um, everybody's. I mean, nobody really treats us any differently. We still go to family functions. We still do everything. I mean, the very first initial reaction when they saw him with the oxygen, of course, they all wanted to know what's going on, and some of them did pull me aside and say, "Hey, what's really happening?" And so I explained to them, but for the most part, everybody's very supportive, and they always ask how he's doing. And my uncle Jack and my aunt Donna, they have become like my adopted parents because my mom has passed, and I'm very close to my aunt and uncle, and so you know, when something happens, they want to know. If he goes to the hospital, they want to know. So they will more than likely be the first people who know, other than my girls, what's going on, for that reason. But they're very supportive with everything.
See, we're lucky that we have a good. You see, my family lives in the East Coast in New York. In case you guys haven't figured the accent out yet, so it would take them a while to get here. Um, I still speak to a lot of them. Some of them send me text every once in a while. Facebook is a good place for them to ask, but I'm not really 100% sure they completely understand what it is that I have. I don't think, and I don't like going around scaring people, even my friends or anything, say, you know, this is an end of life disease. Unless they find a cure, this is going to be it. This is what's going to do me in. It's because it sounds morbid when you're saying that, and I don't really want to scare anyone about the disease, but a lot of ways they have to know the severity of it. Like especially there's been birthday parties and stuff recently on the East Coast, which we would have gone to, but it's just too much for me to go to. Like Carl was saying, it takes you a day to recover. We go do those investigations, and I'm out half of the night. Before I get home, it's like, a good 12, 13 hours for the next 2 days. I mean, I'm not really one to say, hey, let's go out and mow the lawn right now, or, let's go grocery shopping, because I really need a few days to recover, to get that bit of energy back. And then there's a scary thing, and I'm going to segue into that. Um, Sometimes you're feeling really great. And then in the middle of all of that, it just hits you. And where you have to just lay down for an hour or two because you just need to sleep for an hour. And then you wake up feeling great again. Does that happen to you?
I don't have it in the aspect of I have to sleep. Mine are what you would call sort of along the lines of a panic attack almost. I can be going good and strong, not having a problem, and just all of a sudden I can be doing nothing, and I get hit with that feeling of I can't, I can't breathe. I can be doing nothing, but it'll just creep up on you all of a sudden, smack you in the back of the head, and be like, think about what you're doing. Even if you're not doing anything, you've been doing something. And it'll get me every once in a great while. It's like, I got to sit back for a couple hours and chill out and go find something else to do.
See, what scared me the very first time was we were coming back from someplace where we had stayed overnight, and I was driving back. It was 2 in the afternoon, and we were driving back in. We got close to the house here, and I started yawning in the vehicle while I was driving. I was like, okay, maybe I need fresh air in here or something. So I opened the window to get some fresh air in. That didn't do anything. And I started yawning a lot. Then I found myself almost nodding out to sleep. And I had slept a good 9, 10 hours and couldn't understand why. And it happened again. I guess we went grocery shopping one day, and I got into the car after we loaded the groceries in. And again, it started, I felt that yawning again. It like takes over. She'll yell at me. It's like, would you stop? And it's like, no, the loud yawning is keeping me awake. Okay, when I do that, I scare myself and wake myself up. So I have to do that. But it's very scary for a second because you suddenly realize you don't control the disease or can control it right now, that it at any time can control you. Now, Christian, have you found that any of the times you've been with your dad?
Well, yes. Especially when we want to go do something together, right? And so I can tell whether or not he can actually get up out of his chair or not, or he wants to. For instance, he'll have his oxygen on and then take it off for a second while he goes to show me where a tool is in the garage. But but you can just tell that we see the fear in his eyes a bit, like I can't believe I can't breathe right now. Like I don't want to look like I'm suffering, but he obviously is. And so there, there's and and he never really says it. It's just you can see that when somebody's scared, you can tell in their eyes they're scared, and so it's one of the. So it's honestly the first time I've ever seen it with my dad, right? And so as a parent, you usually try and hide those things, but that it humanizes them a little bit.
Well, I think there's a little bit of a guilt that we feel. I know I feel it a lot when Jen is there because Jen is going out of her way to help me. And sometimes I try to cover it up when I'm just not feeling well. Like we'll be planning, say it's Saturday, we're going to go down to this place in Lawrenceburg and we're going to check the stuff out. I'm all gung ho for it. And then Saturday comes around and I feel like crap. Okay, but I get up and I do it because Jen's going to tell you in a second why she even makes me go out and mow the backyard. Because if I had my way, the answer would be no, I wouldn't be out there mowing it. But I'll tell them why you want me to go out.
It's not that I make you go out and do it, because if there are days that you can't do it, then I do all of it. But I want him to be able to, I want him to do things while he still can. I don't want him to just sit around and not do something, because then the day's going to come where he really can't do something. And he's going to look back and say, gosh, I wish I would have went and done this, or I wish I would have done that. And so I do push him a little bit to do things because I want him to do it while he still can. I don't want him sitting back and thinking, later on, I should have, I would have, or I could have. Now's the time to do it. So that's
Carl, does your wife make you do that?
Oh, she's hard on me about that. If I do a lot of my stuff around the beginning of the month when I get my disability check, when I can do, because a lot of the stuff I have to do, it generally tends to involve a bit of money. Working on the vehicle or, working out in the yard, stuff's got to get fixed. And it's like the other 3 weeks of the month is I spend 2 of them recuperating. And then it's like one of them is she'll, let's go do this, let's go do that. Just at least keep me moving for the most part. I mean, I'm supposed to be doing pulmonary rehab, but I sold my previous truck so that I could upgrade to this truck. But at the time when I did it, our gas prices wasn't so high. So the option was good at the time, but now it's kind of biting me in the butt on that one.
Yeah, it sort of hits all of us. See, I know for Jen and I, one of the things those people that know us here where we live know that we love the Bahamas. I mean, I really don't know too many people who say they don't love the Bahamas, but I mean, we really love the Bahamas. And we used to go to Freeport, Bahamas all the time. We had, it's almost like a timeshare, but we had 4 weeks we could go to this resort every year. Okay, that's what our membership. And we were members, so we got, top shelf alcohol. I mean, really nice sitting area. And we had been going for so many years that we would walk in and people from all over the place, hey, Jen, hey, Steve, the workers there because they knew us. Now, for me to get there today, it's a problem because, number one, I can't fly with oxygen tanks. The POCs don't work for me. So that means I'm going to have to drive down to Florida. I'll visit your dad down there, Christian. I got to drive down I got to drive to Florida and take the ferry over to Freeport, which still isn't that bad. Okay, when you start putting up the airfares now, that's really not that bad. The only thing is oxygen. Okay, I won't mention our company, but even my insurance will not pay for oxygen outside the country for a pleasure trip, as they call it. So I would now be responsible for all these oxygen tanks when I got there. And that could become very costly. And the longer I wait, the more costly it's going to be if I decide that I am going to go make one last visit. Um, See, and that's leading me into my next question. I did not do it intentionally. When I say it's my last visit, I'm going to go first with the caretakers, and then Carl, I'll come back to you because I think you and I have a different view on this maybe than others. Do you hear Christian, your dad, talking like that? That this is going to be like the last time he does this, or what? You know what I'm
Oh,
talking about? Does he go
for
through?
for sure. And every time I hug him goodbye, I wonder if it's going to be the last one, right? And that's kind of scary and sad. And he he does things. He does have some rituals, every year that he does for us. And he's like, this could be the last time. But now that it's been a couple of years, I don't want to believe him anymore, right? And so it's hard to hear him talk about he's not going to be around anymore, but it's getting easier and easier for him to talk about it. And so
Do you think he's resigned himself
he
to the fact?
has, for sure, he's had a rich life, and he's in his mid 80s, and so it's he's always been this real strong, powerful guy. And so for him to have that sort of for him to have that as his sort of end of life already being dictated to him, and having it be a sort of a long process, I think he's trying to figure out what that means. Because he would, in 2020, he would tell me, this could be the last time that I do this for you, so just so you know. And here it is 2 years later, right? So at some point, I don't like to talk about it, right? Because I don't know if it changes much. But if he wants to talk about it, I will. And I'm not it's kind of an uncomfortable thing to talk about.
Well, it's very uncomfortable even for us to talk about, and it will be when we get to it. But this is kind of even more intense for Jen to put her 2 cents with me sitting right here. But I still want her to tell us, how she feels about that. Like when I just made that statement, the last time, at least the last time we go there, the Bahamas, that's a tough thing. We used to call that our second home. We even talked about retiring possibly there, buying a house somewhere in Freeport and retiring there. And now, their medical system sucks in plain English. So it's not going to be a place we're going to go to. You tell us.
So when you talk about the last time of doing stuff, I guess that's a reason why I want you to go out and do stuff as much as you can, because none of us really know how much time that we have here. Disclaimer. I guess I should give a disclaimer. I am a psychic medium, so I do know a lot of things, and there are times when I know the end is coming for people. Now, it's not my call to go and tell anybody, hey, this is your last day here on this earth. So I guess for me, it's a little differently because of that. But if that wasn't the case, I would still want him to go out and do all the things that he possibly could do, just in case it was the last time that he could do something. And Christian, my question for you, though, is your dad trying to prepare you and the rest of your family for what's to come by talking about it so that it's easier for you to process?
I think so, because he supports us in so many ways, right? That maybe he's just tactically just trying to tell us that don't plan on these things anymore. It could be that, more so than any kind of emotional thing, right? So it's more of a matter of like keeping your house in order, right? It's more of that kind of conversation than anything else.
Mm-hmm. I get that. Like when my mom, well, before my mom passed, my mom would say those things to me. She would say, you know, when I die, I want this and this and this. And it was to prepare me for what's to come, because the few days before she passed, normally she would call and she didn't call. And so there were other things that led up to that. And even my grandma, she would talk about things, you know, a little bit in advance, not years in advance, but, you know, weeks and stuff like that in advance. So I didn't know if maybe he was kind of easing everybody into that, so that, you know, he's not going to be here. So make sure that you can do this yourself when I'm gone.
Exactly right. And, you know, I don't know, I'm 54. And so, you know, I've had a number of my friends die recently, like in the last couple of years, for really weird things, right? Somebody's hiking in Yellowstone and they die. And like somebody else, like, gets in a car accident, they die. And so, you know, in a way, it might be, if there is a gift at all in any of this, it's that nothing goes unsaid, right? And that's probably, you know, the gift, if anything, right? And so, you know, there's no you know, I wish I had talked to him about this, or I wish we had done this, because I made sure that that had happened, and I'm sure he has too.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's really important. And again, I go back to, and I'm sure your wife does too, why we push so hard for you guys to go do something, or to do whatever it is that you want to do at that point in time while you're still able to do it.
Mm-hmm.
See, if you remember, even when the last time we had seen my mom, who's passed, we were in New York and we were leaving. They lived in an apartment, and I started to walk down the hallway, and she says, "Wait a minute." She says, "You're not going to hug me goodbye?" And I was like, "Yeah." She says, "Because you never know. It's the last time, you know, you hug me." And yeah, okay, whatever. But it literally was the last time I had seen her. I mean, I spoke to her numerous times, but it was the last time that I had seen her and hugged her. So yeah, I guess it's kind of wild that way. Carl, what are your feelings
That's
on this?
pretty much nail on the head. Um, I tend to stay away from that part of the conversation for the most part. Of I'm not really a morbid type person to, you know, though this might be the last time. I don't like hanging that out there. I like to look at it as, you know, yeah, my days may be numbered, but you're not going to have a designation on which day it is. So
Right.
Oh, we lost him. I'll just. Oh, there he
Yep,
is.
there he
He's
is.
back. Go ahead, Carl. We lost you there for a
yeah,
second.
yeah, I think they just got home because the dogs are going to start up now. But I don't hang it out there for the simple fact of, yeah, I mean, you never, like you said, you never know. Everybody's day is different. But I've never been really one to dwell on that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
See, I know when I went to my pulmonologist about a week or two ago, it was my 6-month appointment with him. He was telling me how good the CAT scan showed swelling had gone down. You know, it looked actually how he put it was almost like the CAT scans from last year and this year were reversed. He would expect to see the disease progressing, and it almost looked like it took a step backwards, which is, you know, you sit there and you say, you know, thank you, Jesus. Okay, you'll go through another day. But what he reminded me, and it's something I knew all along, and it's something that I think everyone who listens to the show, whether it be tonight or whenever you listen to it, understand that today we may be great. We may be feeling fine. But like he told me, I had seen him on a Wednesday or Thursday. He said, "You may be feeling great today." He said, "Monday I may be visiting you in the hospital." And he says, "You may be on 10 liters of oxygen and may take a turn." Because IPF is cruel that way. Whereas it is a progressive disease, it can come and slap you in the back of the head when you're not paying attention. I mean, that's the only way I can put it that I know
Pretty much
from living in
precise.
New York. When you're not paying attention, something's going to hit you. And that's why a lot of the discussion here about not really morbidity, but do what you can now when you're still alive. Because I think that's so important that we don't stop living life. Okay, like Christian, you mentioned, your dad doesn't go out as much anymore and stuff. But did he used to go out with his
Oh
friends
yeah,
before
for
that?
sure. Yeah, like part of clubs and those
I
kinds
mean,
of
was
things, you know.
right. And you see, and I think the thing is, you got to get him to go out more. To go back to doing that stuff. Because even as Jen said, then it will be your last time, and you're going to sit back when you can't do it anymore and say, "Why didn't I do it?" Again, back to the title, quality time remaining, the QTR. If we have the ability to do something, we need to do it. I know every pulmonologist that I know of will tell you if you can still do things, go out and do it. Okay, whether it be picking up weights, and be careful with the weights. Okay, there is actual pulmonary rehab and stuff for that will teach you the correct way of doing that. But if you can still go out to the store and go grocery shopping, like in Christian's case, I mean, go to have him go to the store with your mom. When he goes shopping, he's got to go out and still keep doing things because the more you stay active, the better it keeps this
Hmm.
disease in check. So I don't know, if you told him, "Come on, next time you're over there, come on, Dad, we're going grocery shopping. Mom gave me the list, okay, and we're gonna go, just you and I." Would he get up and
He
go?
would, yes. Would he want to? I don't know. Like we go pick up pizza together, but being away from his oxygen for more than an hour or so is a lot. So sometimes he'll go have dinner with friends and those kinds of things. But he feels weird about not bringing his oxygen, and then he has to end early, and then that whole thing happens. So like the other day, we went out on a boat, right? But which was good but we had to be going fast, and he had to be in the wind, and so that was kind of a big, awesome thing to do. But at the same time, like in the last conversation we had, I was like, this is probably the last time we're going to be on the boat together.
Oof. Well, here's one of the things I'm going to say, but about that and him not wearing the oxygen, and it may be something that you want to relate to him. So I was talking to a strange guy from New York. He's a paranormal investigator. Um, when I first was diagnosed with this, Jim will tell you, I was like, "Why am I wearing this 24/7 when I'm outside?" Okay, I mean, really, I didn't need the oxygen. I was breathing fine. I was going about doing everything fine on the outside. And one night we went out to meet our friends for dinner. And we're sitting in the car. We're waiting for them to show up. I was talking to someone on the phone. Finally, I said, "Let's go inside and grab a table before it gets crowded." And I got up, and all of a sudden, the world started spinning. Yes, I know it spins, but I didn't want to see it spinning. Okay. And we started to walk a little bit, and I was like, "Stop." She goes, "What?" I said, "I'm dizzy right now." And she said, "Well, let's go inside and sit down." I was like, "Hell no. They're going to think I'm drunk when I walk in the door." I mean, really, I couldn't see straight. And stood there for a few minutes until the earth slowed down a little bit. And we went inside. And I figured, well, maybe I hadn't eaten yet. So I ordered an appetizer right away to eat something before they showed up. And I was fine throughout dinner. We got up to leave, and again, we walked my friends to their car, and from their car to mine, which was 40 feet. As soon as I started to walk towards them, it started again. Okay, so I was like, "Get me to the car." She'll tell you. It's like, "Get me to the car." We sit down. Well, now I had to drive. So we drove down to Walmart, believe it or not, because we were supposed to buy some things. Well, when I tell you that the shopping cart held me up while I was in Walmart, okay, got what we got, and we went home. Well, the next day I said, "Gee, I need to mention this to my doctor." And there were two doctors at the time that taking care of us. And I sent her an email. Well, I got lambasted, okay? I mean, my wife doesn't yell at me. I felt like I was talking to my mom from way back when. Okay, how many times I told you you're supposed to be wearing oxygen 24/7, even when you're out, you're supposed to have that on. And then here's the point I want to make, Christian, what you told me. The more you go out and do things without the oxygen, you are pushing the disease along. So that's something he may want to keep in mind, that he doesn't want to wear those oxygen tanks. That was my thing at that point. I didn't care if I was going to have them coming out of the top of my head. Okay, I was going to wear those tanks from that point forward because I wasn't going to do anything that was going to push this disease further on. And I think that if he realizes that, like you say, he can only be so long without it on, realize that's pushing the disease further. I know Carl's shaking his head there, yes. But am I correct
Very correct.
on that?
And disclaimer: don't take what I say as a doctor's orders. I was
Right.
one thing that explained to me by a doctor, but you're not getting this from a doctor. There's never too much oxygen.
Mhm.
Christian, your dad is on 2 liters. Turn it up. Because, like I said, I leave my concentrator on 6.5. That's slightly. I could sit on 4 if I want to sit and not do anything. I don't want to have to get the 10 feet from me to my concentrator to have to wait another 5 minutes.
Oh.
So I leave myself turned up higher. Therefore, I don't have to wait for my body to catch up.
That's good.
That was one thing that that doctor. There's never too much.
And trust me, we feel it when that oxygen is lower. I know myself, I had to turn, I was on 3 liters up until very recently. But then I also noticed that 3 liters just wasn't kicking it anymore. And what happened with me was it wasn't selective memory loss, as Jen will tell you that men have. Okay, it actually was. I was beginning to think there was something wrong. Well, again, she'll tell me there's something wrong with me, but I was actually really believing at a certain point that I was starting to get Alzheimer's or something because I was forgetting things. And when I looked it up on the web, our good Google doctor there, it said about turning up the oxygen. And I mentioned it to my doctor, who immediately ordered a 6-minute walk test. And that 6-minute walk test said, yes, I had to be up at 4 liters. So your dad will be able to feel that when the time comes, or like when he's out, he knows when he needs the oxygen. I think people will look at us, and I don't know if you can explain it to them. People look at you more. I don't know what the word would be. That he's smart. Okay, you said he was a CEO for years. Okay, and I know I've run my own companies and stuff like that. If people see me doing something, they don't question it. They should on certain things. Okay, like when I shave my head and stuff. But they don't question you wearing oxygen because it's the smart move to make. And him being a CEO all those years, he knows it's a smart move. He needs that oxygen. And I think once he feels the benefits of wearing the oxygen when he's out, he may want to go out
That's
more.
good advice.
Yeah. Because and again, like Carl said, we're not doctors and stuff, but if they gave him oxygen already, that he's got tanks, it's obviously the doctor's wishes that when he goes out, he's wearing that oxygen and not going outside without it. Now, I'm going to start with Jen on this one, and I'll work my way around.
Sure.
Do you feel in this lifetime that they will find a cure for IPF?
I can't really answer that. I don't know. They might, but then again, they might not. I think there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. I think there's still a lot more testing because what works for one person may not work for another. And so while there might be a cure for some things of it that cures for some people, it may not be for everybody.
Christian?
In the last year where I've been doing my internet research on this, and then we're talking with some experts with my relationship with the different foundations and stuff, I don't think there's enough going on in the medical community to cure it in this lifetime. And I think part of it is that we don't know how many people really have it, right? And so that's why this registry is so important, I think. Then it starts to drug companies, etc., start to see that there's real opportunity there to cure a disease, and that's. I don't think it's going to happen in our lifetime, but hopefully it does sometime.
Well, you know that COVID symptoms now have added so many people to this list with respiratory problems. And there seems to be a greater number of people. I mean, Carl, I don't know about you, but I know to get into my pulmonologist, it's getting longer and longer to get in to see them. Heck, I even wanted to transfer to one in Indy, and it's been 3 months and they haven't even answered my doctor's request for a transfer. That's how busy they are.
That's with COVID. That put a big hamper on stuff. It added so many people because of the respiratory issues that caused alone, and exasperated that people already had. And no, I don't feel that they'll ever find a cure for it, even in my lifetime, being as young as I am. I mean, I just turned 37 this year, so I'll never see it. And like Jen said, that what's good for one may not be good for another, and even I've found that. I find that just with like my yeah, I'll call them my happy pills. Um, what worked for my father and my mother didn't come anywhere near working for me. So it's they've got to find so many versions.
Are you on OFEV?
Yeah, I am on OFEV. I'm on 100 milligrams a day, or twice a day. So
Twice a day.
and like you, I believe you said you felt that the OFEV helped you quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
I was diagnosed in 18. I spent February, the first 2 weeks of February of 19, 2 weeks in March, 2 weeks in October in the hospital of 19. 20, I think I was in the hospital 3 times. Usually right around the pollination times is when it would land me. Yeah.
Welcome to Indiana.
But since they started me on OFEV last year, the only trip I had to the hospital this year was my kidneys for kidney stones. So
Mm-hmm.
the OFEV being even as expensive as it is, thank God for insurance. They've got a good pill going on that one, in my opinion.
Well, you see, my insurance company, which is State's plan, would not even pay for the OFEV because my lung capacity when they did the PFT last year was 40%. And they came up with this rule that they were not going to pay for the medicine for anyone under 50%.
That made no sense.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, so basically you're telling me to die. At that point, I'm only 10% under. What's going on? Now, luckily, and as most of us know, because we're all from the same chat room and on Facebook there's a company called Open Doors. And they're from Beringer Ingle, if I pronounced that correct. They're the company that makes the OFEV. And in my case, thank you very much. And I don't think we thank these people enough. They paid for my OFEV. They pay it completely. I mean, I looked up OFEV is with your out-of-pocket expense for most insurance companies is $400 a month out of pocket. And the total with out-of-pocket and the meds is $110,000 a year. I mean, there's no way.
No way. There's absolutely no way.
I mean, yeah. And yet we
Yeah.
need this to stay alive. Okay, because it's the only thing. Otherwise, that Dr. Google 3 to 5
Become
years
correct.
diagnosis was correct. Yeah. I mean, we would have been dead already. Now, the only thing I do want to talk about with that before I move forward on that is that the research here in this country sucks. There's just no other way to put it. They're not doing anything, period. They're making too much
Yeah,
money
pretty
on the
much.
COVID vaccines and everything else than to worry about that. I got to give Canada and Germany a big thumbs up because they
Hmm.
are working on this. They have found the protein that's caused the scarring. I think it produces, was it produces
Yep.
too much protein that causes the scarring in our lungs. And I was asking Carl if he had heard of this. This morning, I got from the pulmonary fibrosis in their newsletter is a thing called, and I'm going to really mispronounce it because I'm not a medical person. Saracatinib, SARACATINIB. Okay, and right now the tests show that it is more effective and superior to OFEV and Esperet, according to them. AstraZeneca makes it. It's an oral drug, but it's something that's been around for a while. It's been used to cure other cancers, and now find that it works at reducing tissue scarring and fibrosis in our cells. So I know they're going through their second phase. Their test is stop-IPF with a bunch of numbers. They say you got to be 40 and over and have IPF any duration to it. But if I remember, they were looking for people in New York, Connecticut, and I'm tempted to say Texas was the third one. If you go to Pulmonary Fibrosis' website, look at their newsletter, and they have links to those as well. So I'm not sure. You see, I'm the ultimate optimist. Okay? I keep saying if I keep doing the show, I'll have 78,000 listeners a day again. Okay? That ultimate
There you go.
optimist. But, with the OFEV and the IPF, I still feel they got to find something that's going to cure us. And from what I've read, the American Medical Association, or no, uh, who approves the medicine?
Uh,
FDA.
FTA.
The FDA has already said that they will push us. They'll push through a drug if it's found that it cures. So I know Christian has to go soon. So I'm going to go back to him just for one last question. What would you tell people that that are taking care of someone with IPF? What advice would you give them?
I would follow the lead of the person suffering with the disease. I would say is probably the number one thing. So if they want to talk about it, or if they want to, you know, kind of follow how aggressively they want you to be involved in their disease is probably the first thing. And then the second is, I would say the good thing is you just hug a little longer. When you talk about things that you don't like talk about, and so the advice is, do what the patient really wants, and don't push it, because that could create more stress to the situation. But then also use it as an opportunity to get closer.
And I agree because I think that we all want all time that QTR again. We want that to be so we want to enjoy that quality time remaining because we know we're not really going. Carl will tell you, and I'm sure I will tell you. I can't even envision what that's going to be like. I was thinking about it when I took a shower this morning. I was like, what's it going to be like when I can't do this? Okay, when I'm in bed and I can't get up and I can't move around anymore. where Jen's going to have to take care of me 24/7, wearing diapers or whatever, I can't even in my head even envision that spot. So I still think about that QTR, which is why I named this. The quality time remaining is so important. And I think with your dad, I think he wants that quality time with you. And I think you want that quality time with him as well.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Christian, I thank you for joining us. I know you have to run. So, but thank you for coming on the show tonight. Your insight is extremely
thank you. And
important.
thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I'm going to go back to call because I know you sent me something there, and I didn't get a chance to read it when you sent it. Tell me about you sent me. You said if you want another
Oh, I
opinion.
had sent that out for him.
Okay.
Wasn't sure if he could see that. If he to reach out to me.
I'm sure he read it. I'm sure he read it because we all see it. So, but yeah, I mean, I want to talk about the page, I guess, because that Facebook support group is really just that. It's a support group
It is.
for all of us. Okay. Now, I want people that are listening and watching that don't have IPF understand. I went to the support group page and put down what I wanted to do with the show tonight, and Carl and Christian stepped right up and said they were more than happy to be part of the show, and I'm humongously thankful for it because it's not even for my show or ratings because Jen will tell you I really don't care about that.
Information in
I
general.
really don't. Right. I know, as you know, when we're on that, and even Jen knows, when we're on that page, you get what we could laugh and we call the newbies that are coming in. They all have that same question: how do I stop the diarrhea after I take the OFAB? And I laugh at it because when the first time they sent me the OFAB, they sent me a 2-month supply and they sent me 3 boxes of anti-diarrheal medication. And it was
what
like,
kind of sick joke is this?
Yes, it's like they trying. You remember, Jen? I was like, are they trying to tell me something? Okay, and it's still you become accustomed. We all have our own way of dealing with it, and for me, it's peanut butter and crackers. Okay, whether it be those little peanut butters or just regular crackers with peanut butter. Anything with peanut butter works for me. Really. There you go. Right.
Always within arm's reach.
Works fantastically. Yeah, it works fantastically for me. And we had run out of them, and when we went shopping, we forgot to get them. It took me to the second day to realize why I was getting diarrhea again, because I thought it was something I ate that caused it. And the second day of running into the bathroom and going made me realize, you dumb butt, okay, you're not taking the protein. Next morning, she'll tell you, I was going for a doctor's appointment. We made sure we got
Oh yeah,
a box of them like you had there, and I have them in there. And since then, knock on wood, no diarrhea. So, what do you tell people that come into this and that I hate to use the word newbies, but they really are? Someone who's got this and dealing with the same stuff we've gone through. Okay, what do you tell them?
Protein. I mean, my doctor told me flat out when they put me on the OFEV, protein is going to be your next best friend. And at first it was like, why? And he didn't tell me why, but I was like, why? It will be, trust me. And then the box showed up with my new prescription. And this sick joke of 2 boxes of anti-diarrhea pills. And you start reading, and you read, and you read, and you're going, so I'm supposed to take something that's going to cause this? Yep.
Those boxes, yep.
Oh, I used mine, trust me.
Still have. Well, for the first half a week, I used mine. Okay, but then after that,
Hey, welcome back.
I really didn't need them anymore. I mean, it was kind of humorous in the beginning, but then when you start getting it, it's not
Well,
funny
no, it's not.
anymore.
It's not funny, and especially when there's one bathroom and one, two, three, four, five, 6 people.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's no longer a sick joke.
Well, Jen will tell you about there's one bathroom with just the two of us, and she doesn't appreciate when I'm in there for that,
Um,
you know.
but
And
for the most part, I continued with the Walmart brand of the I just read on my alpha pill every morning and every night, and because I tend to stay away from crackers. I mean, I have them for when I want snacky stuff, but I use the anti-diarrheal. But yeah, that's what I got to tell them too. It's just like you got to learn your proteins. You got to learn what's going to work for you. It's trial. The first 2 years is a trial and error until you get comfortable with what you're comfortable with. Everybody's case is different. Oh, what do I do? What do I do? And it's like you got to try.
you have to watch too the dosage because we all start on at 150
Yep.
milligrams, and sometimes the
Way too
150.
much.
I know. I again, we're not giving medical advice, but I know in my case, it started to affect my liver. Enzymes started to go off the chart from it, and I worked with my general practitioner, and we took me off of some meds that I was on. That's a first because I've never had a doctor take me off of meds that I've
Yeah.
been on for years. I just figured I was going to my grave taking those. Um, but we've gotten it. We went down to 100 milligrams, and even just the blood test I did. When did I go? Thursday, I think, for my blood test, or Wednesday. Whatever day I went, it's like one or two
What they
numbers over
want at.
what the high rate. And you know what? I can live with that. Okay, when the first time, it was 2.5 times that.
Yeah, my pulmonologist probably kicked my butt because I haven't been for a blood test since I have started taking OFEV, and you're supposed to go for one every 3 months. But they
Yeah.
mine agreed with me because that was the only thing that with everything I've been on, what I explained to them was happening, and he instantly said your OFEV's too high. So that's kind of one way I know I've come across a doctor that knows what he's talking about when it comes to my PF because I can explain something and he's pretty much nail on the head with what I'm thinking. And it's like he's like your OFEV's too high, we'll drop it. Okay. He said finish out your bottle, order your next one. And that was they dropped me down to the 100 milligrams twice a day, and I haven't had any issues.
See, without issues now, I actually questioned him last week. Should I go back to 150 units? And he said, don't mess with
Exactly.
what's working. He said, you're taking 100 units. Your liver's okay now. You know, the disease is taking a step backwards. Don't
Yep.
play games with it, okay? Because it's silly to play games with it. And he's right. I mean, he actually said to me, whatever you're doing, continue doing. And we had, and I say to everyone there too, make sure you have a good pulmonologist, okay? Because there are a number of them out there. I actually had a problem with this pulmonologist only for the sake that I had asked a question about something and they said, well, we need to send you for another we need to send you for a 6-minute walk test. It's been a year. And I was like, I just did it last week. And you told me to go up to 4 liters of oxygen. I mean, I got a stock answer back in an email and I went
Yeah.
through the roof over it. And this time he sat down with me sat right next to me. I was getting a little worried, but nurse was there. But I mean, he literally, had a heart to heart with me. He says, now I know you applied for a transfer. And I'm thinking to myself, yes, I did put that on answering, so I'm stuck with you anyway. but he's like, understand, he said, I actually teach at IU. What's the hospital in
Methodist.
Indy? No, not St. Francis, but there's another one. Isn't it IU? Or
IU Methodist. There's Riley.
whatever it is up there.
Okay.
He teaches it. He says, so I probably teach the doctor you want to go see. Okay. He said, listen, he said, if you want to go, go. He says, I won't take it personally or anything. He says, but we are busier than we've been because of COVID. So it takes a little longer to get in. You might wait a little longer for an appointment. Once you're here, Jen will tell you there was one time we got there for an 11 o'clock appointment, and we got there. They made you come 20 minutes early. Why? I don't know, because all the information's the same. We check in, sit down, and you sit there for 20 minutes. But they didn't come into the room till like a quarter of one to take care of me. And I'm patient to a degree, but my time is just as important as his. And he came in and listened to my heart a little bit, sat down, talked, how you feeling, blah, blah. It's like, okay. And Jen's like, where you going? And he said, well, we're done. And we're like, no, you're not. Okay, sit down. We have questions from the CAT scan that was done. He said, well, no, they're okay. And it was like, sit down. We have questions about this. And my non-medical advice to anybody is that if you're at a doctor and there's something you don't know, make them sit his or her butt down and answer your questions. You are just as important as everybody else that comes into that practice. Jen, tell them about the blood tests.
So one thing I will say before I talk about the blood test is make sure that you have somebody with you who can ask those questions, because sometimes Steve gets a memory fog for whatever reason, and you need somebody there that knows the questions that you want to ask or need answers to, and hold them accountable for that. If you know you're supposed to have certain tests done and they're like, no, it's later, and you know it's sooner, make sure they do that. And because the blood testing that I'm going to be talking about is exactly just that. So when Steve was on a higher dose of OFEV, his liver was, had some problems. There was some damage to it. It's a little bit higher. And so he's supposed to have a blood test every 30 days. Well, prior to that, he had a diarrhea problem, which they were trying to get all figured out. They finally got that figured out, started him back on the OFEV, and the doctor was trying to say, no, he could come in. They would do a blood test in 90 days. And I said, no, that's not the case, because he just started this OFEV again. And it's supposed to be for the first 3 months, every 30 days, to check the liver to make sure that there's no problems with the liver. So both of the doctors left, and they sent the nurse back in, and then they were going to schedule it for 90 days. And it's like, I lost it. And I'm like, no, it's supposed to be every 30 days. Had they waited for the 90 days or had, nobody spoke up and just let it go with that, his liver would have been destroyed. Like totally.
Yeah, my liver would have shut down. But the numbers were so high, liver would have shut down.
Yeah. And that's, you got to pay it. You have to advocate for yourself.
Yeah.
And
See, but she's right. If you have a caregiver, and I'm sure Christian, well, I'm sure his mom goes to the hospital and visits with his dad, but somebody's got to be there that knows everything that's going on and is paying attention, because Carl, yourself, they start throwing stuff at you, and they take your attention in 5 other places. And I'm sorry, since I've been retired, I've shut off part of my brain that I don't need to run anymore. Yeah. And she's right. I don't remember everything going on and some of the questions I need to ask. So I do write them down. Sometimes I have no choice if she's not there. Like the last time I went to see him, I just in my head said, I have 4 questions. I just kept remembering 4 questions. So when I was asking him, I was counting them down. And by okay, that was 1, that was 2. While I was asking the third one when he was answering, I was listening to him and I was trying to remember the 4th question. So that I had all 4 questions asked and I didn't forget them because I think he knows now he can't just walk in and walk out. You know, if you only see me every 6 months, I need to talk to you, okay? I need to know specifics that everything is okay. And, the liver was something very important because, as I said, yeah, they're going to keep me alive from OFEV, but they're going to kill me
Yeah.
by destroying my liver. And even Open Doors has a nurse that calls every month. You're assigned a nurse. And she called, actually, I just spoke to her the other day. They call follow up. They have a whole record on you as far as what you've told them, your blood tests and everything. And I remember telling her at the time, and she goes, "The liver is a side effect of the OFEV." And I said, "Well, why isn't he telling me that?" And they said, "Well, you need to tell him to read the protocols for OFEV." And I said something else. She goes, "That's a side effect of the OFEV." And I'm sitting there thinking, "Oh, great. Okay, now I'm not going to even be able to take this medicine." The other one, people are saying you can't go out in the sun with Espray or something like that. So,
Esbrit.
yeah, it's like, okay, at least the OFEV didn't have that. It just had the diarrhea, okay? So, once you get that working relationship, and that's what I'll tell the newbies, is get that understanding with the doctor. Write down your questions that you have and make sure you get the questions answered how you want them answered. May not be what you want to hear, but at least they're answering the question and you understand that they're listening to you. Because I thank my general practitioner, she's fantastic. Okay, she listens and works as an advocate, and they all have to work as a team. You're part of the team. Jen is part of my team, and the general practitioner is, and the pulmonologist. It's all one team, and they all have to work together to
Mm-hmm.
watch what's going on with me. And thank goodness, I have a fairly good team right now. The other doctor was a nurse practitioner. She sort of sailed the ship, which is kind of humorous because she took a job on a cruise line as medical director at a cruise
Oh,
line.
they got lucky.
So he didn't know that I knew that. So when I said that to him, and then I explained, and he looked at me really strange when I first said it, but then I think he understood that I knew where she had gone. But, and the same thing, if anyone's having problems with oxygen companies. Now, I don't know, have you had any problems with
I
your
have a
oxygen
really good one. I
supplier?
haven't had any problems with mine. I won't name names, but I love mine.
You may need to know the
I
company that
I
you're
had
dealing with.
I have type it in that private chat. I have a company was really really good with us all along, and then what happened was COVID was really starting to hit them hard. Okay, yes, that's not who I have, um, and what started to happen was they were starting to find there was no employees actually, I should say, working there. One day we went there because they weren't answering the phone calls back. And Jen and I drove there one day. It was like 3 in the afternoon, and there was no one in there. And I was like, "Where the heck did everybody go?" Okay, actually, I use different
Oh yeah.
words, but we're on YouTube. So it was like, okay. So that Monday, I was on the phone, and I called their Indy office, and they said, "Oh no, they're there. They're just short staffed. They only have one person working there." And I'm like, "Wait a minute, one person is making deliveries, entering all the insurance information, and answering the phones, and doing the qualifications because they got to do a 6 minute walk test for the oxygen also." And she said yes. So they finally hired a few people, long story short. But then they came with this rule about they were going to give me 25 tanks every 90 days. And I was like, maybe I heard that wrong. What
Yeah,
did
run
you
that by
just
me
say?
again.
And I made him text it back to me 25 tanks every 90 days. So first I contacted my insurance company, figured maybe this is their rule. And the guy told me, he says, absolutely not. Whatever the doctor prescribes for you and you need, we pay for. And they even tried to call them and they didn't call them back. So I went to the doctor 2 days later, as I said, and asked him. And he said, who told you that? I said, well, they are. And he goes, no, 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 that's wrong. He says, as many tanks as you need is what you get. So I spoke to a friend of mine who is a state representative in Indiana, Randy Fry, and I know Randy very well and let his office know what was going on. And I also spoke to my attorney about it. So when he texted me back and says, tell me one more time what the rule is. And he told me. I said, well, I was speaking to a state representative who's going to be in contact with you. I said, the insurance company's already calling you. You're not calling them back. I said, plus you're also going to have to speak to my attorney because he wants to know how you're playing doctor and you're writing a diagnosis and treatment when you're not doctors, you're just a provider. They didn't answer me for about
Imagine that.
2 hours. Then it came back to me that I was allowed 30 tanks every 30 days. They were going to make an exception for me, and I said, nope, sorry, nope. This isn't just about me, it's about you and everybody else. It's like, you're not playing that game. We get as many tanks as we need. Okay, and if you have a problem providing it, let me know. We'll change providers. Okay, so he asked me if I'd come out. That one day we were going to Columbus, so we went there, and he ended up giving me, what was it, 60 something tanks when we were there. Okay, I was afraid driving home that if I got rear-ended, life was over. Forget about having
I shouldn't laugh at that. I'm
IPF.
sorry.
I was going to go up in a wall of smoke. Okay, that was kind of dangerous for me. But we have the oxygen here, and like he told me, he said it's ridiculous the rules they're making because he goes to Greensburg, Westport, and North Vernon every Wednesday. I'm not the only person in this small town of Westport that has oxygen from them. There's other people. So what difference does it make if he drives 2 minutes around the corner to come to me every time he's here? It makes
Yeah.
zero sense. I mean, they even offered me a job answering phones for them in the office. And I would have messed with my insurance and my social security.
Yeah.
Wouldn't take that either. But I figured, well, heck, I'm there. I don't have to worry about taking oxygen. They have enough machines and everything there. I'll be fine. But to anyone that's listening from the group that's come to the page, I want you to understand, don't, be proactive with your doctor, be proactive with your insurance company, be proactive with your oxygen suppliers. Don't let them play games. Well, we can only, no, you will do what you're prescribed to do. And if
Exactly.
you can't do it, tell me. So we'll go somewhere else. Because when I go somewhere else, I'm also going to report you to the state that you can't keep up with this. And the state will step in. And you see how quick you're going to keep up with stuff.
Yeah.
Oh,
They
definitely.
didn't want to hear any of especially they didn't want to hear from my lawyer.
Oh, they don't like it when stuff goes legal.
Yes.
Like I said, I did have a smaller company before I got with the company I'm with now, and the only reason I actually changed was because my insurance. I got set up with that company right off the bat. It's who my pulmonologist referred me to.
Mm-hmm.
Well, come to find out, I was with them for 8 months before I found out they never even took my insurance.
Well,
I was like, okay, so they said, well, they finally contacted me about it and said we need to do something about this. Well, I called my company I'm with now, and oh yeah, we'll get a hold of your doctor for you. And I went, huh? Yeah, don't worry about it. And I mean, the lady's like, we'll get a hold of this other company. We'll get a hold of your doctor. And I mean, they did. It was awesome because they're within 3 days.
Yeah.
3 days. They had started me off on one of the POCs, and I didn't like that thing from the get go. But within 3 days of contacting the company I'm with now, I had tanks, new concentrator, home delivery, and it was I I I made it easier on them. I mean, because 9 times out of 10, I keep quite a few of my tanks in my truck. I get into town, I'll go into town, I'll swap out all my tanks,
Mm-hmm.
and or if I have I have a week where they come out every 2 weeks. So if I have 1 week where I go through 30 tanks, which when it's nice out, it's not
Yeah,
hard
it's
to
easy
do.
to do. Mm-hmm.
That I'll call them up early. Hey, I need 30 tanks, and they'll come. Yeah, we'll be out tomorrow. Or do you need us now? If you don't need us now, we'll come out in the morning. I said, no, come out in the morning. And I love my company.
I give them credit when my POC, um, Jen actually noticed it one day that it was making some strange noise. The concentrator itself was making some really strange noises. And I had, this was the second one, this was brand new out of the box. I mean, they literally opened the box, took it out of the plastic and everything.
Oh,
And
Lord.
it was making a lot of noise. So I called them, they came out, and the first thing he did was took the filter out, took this board off, and there was another filter in there.
Still wrapped in plastic.
No, inside the thing. And I'm
Yeah.
like, well, first off, I was like, it would have been nice if you told me that inside the machine there was another filter. Well, this thing was overflowing. I mean, it never been cleaned in a year and a half.
Oh, damn.
So he put in a new filter, and we said we should be fine. I said, okay. Well, later that day, it was like talcum powder was coming out of the machine all over the floor. And I'm like, what is this stuff? I'm thinking, well, they even said too, maybe there's still some dust in the machine that's still coming out. So I actually vacuumed up the hoses and inside the machine and everything was still coming out. So I looked it up online and actually it says there's two tubes inside of it that need to be replaced when that starts to happen. That's a warning sign that needs to be replaced. So they came and swapped me out with the machine that I have now. The POC that they originally gave me wouldn't stay charged. I would charge it up and I mean just lay it on the cabinet. And when I go to use it, the battery was dead.
Yep.
So I'd have to charge it up and then use it the next day. Or like in the car, I kept it plugged into the cigarette lighter. Okay. And they never was able to come up with another machine. So I asked them for a new battery at least. They told me I could go out and buy a battery.
Yeah, they did that
It's
to me
like,
too.
wait a minute, I'm not buying a battery for your machine.
Mm-mm.
Okay, you're going to take the machine back at a certain point, and I can't use it anymore. I'm not buying you a battery. So POC for me was I probably used 3 times, and it stayed in a box after that until I gave it back to them.
It was nice when I was first put on oxygen. You know, it got me around quite a bit, and I wasn't lugging a tank. But that was one thing when I made the switch because my company now offered me the POC,
Mm-hmm.
and I started asking a few questions like, how much is a couple of questions that should be asked. What's the liters on one of them small tanks? What's the average battery life last on one of these POCs? Stuff like that. And then I weighed out. I sat down with the wife and weighed out. Well, might as well just get a tank. I might as well just get a bunch of tanks. And that's what I did. I mean,
That's why I'm concerned
this year
about.
I was on bees.
Yeah, I've had those little tanks too. I still have one of them, I think, in the closet. The little big tank. They were much easier to carry around.
They were nice to throw in a backpack.
Well, yeah. Well, I got the next size up in a backpack that I carry around. I bought a bigger backpack.
Yeah.
So
now, I got rid of the B's altogether, and I moved up to D's up until, what are we in right now? September?
Yep.
I want to say February. February, I finally switched out to E-tanks. And, of course, I was driving a Ford Ranger, so I had split seat. I had switched out the bench seat and put in 2 buckets, and I just climbed in the truck, and I bought
respirator?
no, what am I trying to think of? a fire extinguisher holder
There you go. Okay.
and mounted it to the back wall between the seats. So I'd climb in a truck, slap it between the seats, throw it in a bracket, and away I went.
So I use the bigger tanks and I put them on the floor of the back seat going in opposite directions. So I could just take the regulator off and put it on the other one. Or sometimes I got two regulators. I'll just pull the kennel hose off and put it on the other one and turn it on. We were at a seminar recently. And that's what we did. Well, I'm going to wrap this up. To anyone that has IPF, okay, you're part of a big group. There's more and more people, I almost want to say, coming out of the woodworks with it, okay? I just see the group growing and growing. That 25,000 people in the or 250,000 people in the U.S. number has to be wrong now.
Yeah, it's got to be way off.
Yeah, because that's what they used to say. There's only 250,000 people in the U.S. that have it. I sometimes think I see more in the chat room than anything else there. So I'm just going to let you each have an opportunity. What do you want to say to just anyone listening or anyone even with IPF that might be listening?
Go ahead, Jen.
Well, for me, I mean, the one thing that I would say, if you have IPF and you are a caretaker, is you may have to hold space for somebody, and by that I mean just be there to listen to them, because there might be days that they just need to vent and say whatever it is they have to say. Don't take it personal. Because they may say things that they ordinarily wouldn't say, and it's out of frustration. The other thing is, make sure that you take time for yourself, even if it's 15 minutes a day. That's so very important. Again, you can't give to somebody else what you don't have. And if you're trying to give something from an empty cup, it's kind of pointless. You need to take care of yourself, because if you need to take care of somebody else and you get sick, who's going to take care of you? And who's going to take care of that other person? For people who have IPF, make sure you have somebody to go with you if you can to doctor's appointments. Now, I know you're not always going to have somebody with you, but if you can, make sure you have somebody to go with you, and make sure that you have somebody that if you can't say something, that the other person will say something, and, not be afraid to say something, because sometimes you're going to have to do that. You may upset the doctors or the nurses, but you got a person that you have to take care of, and that's more important than their feelings, is the way I look at it. So, and if there's days that you can't get everything done, well, there's days you can't get everything done. Tomorrow's another day. Don't sweat it. There's a ton of things that needs to be done here, and I can't get it all done in one day or 1 week, because I'm only one person. So that's really it.
Call.
Advocate for yourself is my biggest thing. Nobody's going to do it for you. If you're living with IPF, advocate for yourself. Talk to your family about it. You can ask the wife. If she's got questions for me, she'll ask. She's just as hard-headed as I am. My side of the family, like I said, we live with her mother and her sister. That's one thing that came about from my IPF. Family's going to have questions. Don't shoot them down. Because, like Steve said, or not Steve, Christian said, they're not always going to be there. You never know when. As far as your doctors go, they're paid. You're going to make them mad? Oh, well, but they're paid. They get paid to do what they do. So be it. And once again, advocate for yourself. Ask the questions. Even if you don't want to hear the answer, ask the question.
Well, I say ditto to what everyone has said. you know, just understand you're not alone, I think is part of it, because sometimes we hold stuff inside. And I know, Carl, I know you're holding in emotions. I'm holding in certain emotions too, that we just don't want to go that dark place inside of us, because it is a dark place. I mean, we are very much aware right now this is an end of life disease for us. Okay. But we're going to live. Again, that QTR, that quality time remaining, we're going to enjoy all the way through. And I say to anyone that's listening that has IPF or is a caregiver, make the people and live as much of their life as possible, because if they don't, like Jen said, they're going to regret that later on. So I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. To Carl, to Christian, to Jen for Your Life Matters show. Next week, on next Thursday, we're going to have the guest that was supposed to be on our first show, Bill Bean, when I ended up in the ER and couldn't be there for it. He's a spiritual deliverance minister, really great person. He was on the show with Jen and I when we ran that show probably about 20 times. He's a good friend of ours, and it's a very interesting conversation. So until next week, thank you for joining us, and hope to see you again next Thursday.